The sun was beginning to set over Earth, casting long shadows across the military base. Soldiers and officers went about their routines, unaware of the threat that was silently creeping closer. Thousands of miles above the planet, an alien fleet silently made its way through space, heading straight for Earth. The fleet, made up of ships that glowed with a strange, unfamiliar energy, was a force to be reckoned with. However, Earth's defense systems remained calm, with no signs of any incoming threats. In the command center, Colonel David Harris stared at the radar screen. There had been reports of a strange object near the outer edges of the solar system, but it was too faint to be of concern. His team had confirmed that it was nothing more than a false alarm. For a moment, the soldiers on the base felt a sense of relief. After all, humanity had been at peace for years. The idea of an invasion was almost too far-fetched to believe. They had grown complacent, thinking they were safe from all dangers. But then, the unexpected happened. Without any warning, the entire base went dark. Lights flickered, and the hum of machinery came to an abrupt halt. Panic spread like wildfire as soldiers scrambled to check their equipment and communications. The air was thick with confusion. Colonel Harris quickly barked orders, but his voice was drowned out by the growing chaos. From the sky above, a massive fleet of alien ships descended, their shields shimmering as they broke through Earth's atmosphere. They were enormous, their designs unlike anything Earth's scientists had ever seen. These ships were sleek and deadly, capable of unleashing destruction in a heartbeat. The sky turned a deep red as the alien ships deployed their warbeasts, monstrous, genetically enhanced creatures with razor-sharp claws and teeth that could tear through steel. The first explosion shook the ground, followed by several more. The air was filled with the sound of screeching metal and the screams of soldiers as they scrambled to defend their base. But it was clear that humanity was not prepared for this level of attack. The warbeasts were too powerful, too fast. They crushed anything in their path with ease. Colonel Harris tried to rally his troops, but his voice faltered. The enemy was too overwhelming. He had underestimated the aliens' strength. Earth's defense systems, once considered the best in the galaxy, failed to hold up against the onslaught. The soldiers fought back, but it was like trying to stop a tidal wave with a sandcastle. As the battle raged on, one soldier, Sergeant Ben Cooper, was thrown into the chaos. Ben was a seasoned fighter, but even he could hardly believe what he was seeing. His dog, a canine unit named Max, stood by his side, ready for action. Max had been with Ben through countless battles, but this was different. The alien warbeasts were relentless. They didn't just fight, they hunted with a precision that made them deadly. Ben and Max ran toward the front line, dodging alien fire and making their way through the battlefield. They fought side by side, taking down enemy soldiers and alien warbeasts. Despite the overwhelming odds, Ben remained focused. His dog's loyalty and bravery inspired him to keep fighting, even when the situation seemed hopeless. But then, as the battle reached its peak, a giant alien warbeast, taller than anything Ben had ever seen, appeared. It charged at them with terrifying speed, its claws slashing through the air. Ben aimed his rifle, but the creature was too fast. With one swift move, the warbeast struck, sending Ben flying across the field. Max, seeing his partner in danger, launched himself at the alien beast. He bit into the creature's arm, trying to hold it back long enough for Ben to recover. But the warbeast was too strong. With one final roar, it threw Max aside, causing the dog to crash into the ground with a sickening thud. Ben's heart sank as he watched his loyal companion lie motionless. His breath caught in his throat as he rushed to Max's side. The battlefield seemed to blur around him. His dog, the one constant in his life, was hurt badly, perhaps fatally. He could feel a tear form in his eye, but he wiped it away, refusing to let his emotions get the best of him. There was no time for that. He checked Max's pulse. The dog's breathing was shallow, and he was badly injured, but there was still a chance. Ben gritted his teeth. "Stay with me, boy," he muttered, his voice hoarse. He had to get Max to safety, or all hope would be lost. But the war was far from over. The alien forces, led by an imposing commander, continued their relentless assault on the human base. The commander, with his cold eyes and calculating demeanor, looked down on Earth as if it were just another conquest in his long list of victories. He had no intention of stopping until humanity was crushed beneath his boot. Ben knew that the real battle was just beginning. The Warbeasts were only the first wave of the alien invasion. The Earth's defenses had already been overwhelmed. And now, humanity was on the brink of annihilation. He glanced at Max, still unconscious, and made a vow. He would not let his home planet fall. In that moment, he knew what he had to do. With Max by his side, or without him, if it came to that, Ben would lead the charge to save humanity from the alien menace. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and outmatched. But there was one thing the aliens didn't understand: humanity's will to survive. And that was a force they could never defeat. The first phase of the battle had begun. The stakes had never been higher. Earth's fate hung in the balance, and only one thing was certain: the fight for survival was far from over. Ben and his fellow soldiers would need to dig deep, pushing themselves past their limits, in order to stand a chance against the invaders. But with every heartbeat, with every breath, the odds seemed to grow slimmer. As the enemy closed in, Ben stood tall, his determination unwavering. The Earth might be on the brink of collapse, but it was far from finished. There was still hope, and as long as there was hope, humanity would never surrender. Cliffhanger. Just as Ben is about to fight back, an alien warbeast, larger and more vicious than any they've faced so far, appears in front of him, signaling the start of the next phase of the battle. Will humanity survive, or will the alien forces wipe them out? The situation on Earth had become increasingly dire. Alien warbeasts, their eyes glowing with ferocity, had almost wiped out humanity's defenses. Cities were falling one by one, and the human military was struggling to hold the line. The once proud forces of Earth were now reduced to a small, scattered group of soldiers fighting to survive. Sergeant Ben Cooper was in the middle of this chaos, his heart heavy with the weight of responsibility. He had seen things no one should ever have to see. His dog, Max, was badly injured, but he refused to leave his side. Even now, as they ran through the desolate, war-torn streets, Ben kept a steady hand on Max's body. The dog's shallow breathing reminded him of the deep bond they shared. Max was not just a pet. He was a soldier, a brother in arms. Losing him was something Ben couldn't bear, yet he knew that the battle for Earth's survival would not wait for anyone, not even for Max. Ben's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of approaching alien forces. The warbeasts were relentless, moving swiftly through the shadows of the city. Ben had been briefed about their strength, their ability to tear through metal and concrete with ease, but the most terrifying part was their unrelenting pursuit. These creatures did not stop. They didn't tire. They were engineered to hunt, and humanity was their prey. With Max barely able to stand, Ben pushed forward, running through the ruins of the city with determination. He had one destination in mind: the facility where Earth's last hope lay. An experimental weapon designed specifically to combat the alien warbeasts. This weapon was no ordinary piece of technology. It was an eye-powered drone, created using the most advanced technology Earth had to offer. The drone was equipped with an array of devastating weapons capable of taking down even the toughest alien creatures. However, the drone's eye was a wild card. It had been programmed with a highly advanced artificial intelligence, one that could think and adapt like a human. But the problem was that controlling it was extremely difficult. The AI had the potential to become unstable, which was why it had been kept under wraps, only used as a last resort. Ben's heart pounded in his chest as he thought about the weapon. It was their only chance. But as he looked down at Max, the weight of the situation hit him harder than ever. He was running out of time. The alien forces were closing in, and Max was still badly injured. Ben could hear the sounds of the Warbeasts approaching, their growls growing louder with each passing second. Ben reached the entrance of the facility, his mind racing. He had no idea how he was going to get the drone online and operational, but it was his only hope. If he failed, humanity's last stand would be over, and Earth would fall to the alien invaders. Inside the facility, the air was thick with tension. The walls were lined with advanced technology, blinking screens and humming machines all around him. Ben quickly moved to the control panel, his fingers flying over the keys as he tried to activate the drone. But nothing happened. The system was locked. He could hear the distant sounds of the alien Warbeasts' growls, their hunger for destruction driving them forward. In that moment of desperation, Ben realized that he needed to use the AI in the drone to fight back. But to do that, he would have to access the system manually, which meant risking the AI's instability. He didn't have much time to make the decision. As the alien forces drew closer, Ben knew he had no choice. It was either use the weapon and risk everything, or watch as humanity was destroyed. He looked down at Max. The dog was lying weakly beside him, barely able to move, but still alive. Ben's heart wavered. Could he really risk Max's life for the mission? He had no idea what would happen if he activated the AI, but he knew that if it worked, it could be their only chance at survival. But would it be worth it? Max had already been through so much. Ben had always promised to protect him, but now he was faced with a decision that would test that promise like never before. Ben swallowed hard, knowing that there was no time for second-guessing. He needed Max to help him activate the system. The AI was designed to be controlled by a biological signal, and Max, as his partner, was the perfect candidate to sync with the system. But would the dog survive the process? The risks were enormous. As Ben stared at Max, he made his decision. He would try. He would use Max's life force to activate the AI. And if it worked, they could win. If it didn't, he would have failed humanity, and Max would be lost. The uncertainty weighed heavily on him, but he could not afford to hesitate. With trembling hands, Ben carefully lifted Max onto a nearby platform designed to interface with the drone. The dog, barely conscious, looked up at Ben with eyes that still held the familiar loyalty and trust. Ben held Max's gaze for a long moment, silently asking for forgiveness, knowing that this decision might cost him everything. Then, Ben connected Max to the interface. The system hummed to life, and the AI within the drone began to activate. But something unexpected happened. The AI's interface flickered, and a voice, cold and mechanical, came through the speakers. Biological signal detected. Preparing synchronization process. The drone's weapons powered up, but so did the surrounding technology, causing an almost overwhelming surge of energy to fill the room. The air felt thick, charged with potential. The process was beginning, but Ben's heart pounded as he realized just how dangerous this was. Could Max survive the synchronization? Would the AI become uncontrollable? Outside, the Warbeasts were closing in, their heavy footsteps vibrating through the walls. Ben could feel the ground shake as the first wave of alien creatures broke through the door. He had mere minutes before they would be inside the facility. Max whimpered in pain as the system began to link with his nervous system. The connection was more than just physical. It was a mental link as well, something Ben had never fully understood about the technology. He could see the pain in his dog's eyes, but he had to push forward. They were so close. The AI was coming online, and soon they would have a weapon powerful enough to fight back. Just as the alien forces began to breach the entrance, Ben's fingers hovered over the final command. The moment of truth had arrived. He had only one chance to activate the weapon and save Earth. Cliffhanger. Ben's decision was made, but the drone's eye wasn't fully under his control yet. Would it turn on him? Could Max survive the process, or had Ben made a fatal mistake in using his dog's life force to fuel the weapon? The battle for Earth had reached its tipping point. The stakes were higher than ever, and humanity's very survival hung in the balance. As the alien warbeasts relentlessly attacked the city, the faintest glimmer of hope flickered in the midst of chaos. Ben stood, weapon in hand, beside his injured dog, Max, knowing that their only chance lay in the activation of the AI-powered drone. Ben's fingers trembled as he entered the final command to engage the weapon. The facility around him hummed with energy as the AI systems came online, its metallic voice filling the air. I-Core activated, tactical integration complete. The drone, now alive with artificial intelligence, began to synchronize with the battlefield, calculating optimal strategies in real time. But Ben knew that this wasn't just about technology, it was about survival. The drones might have advanced calculations and raw power, but they lacked the one thing that humans had: heart. The emotional drive to protect, to fight for something greater than oneself. And that's where Ben and his dog, Max, came in. The Warbeasts, genetically enhanced creatures designed for one purpose: to destroy, were closing in fast. The city was a war zone, buildings crumbling, and the streets filled with the sounds of destruction. Ben's military training kicked in as he and Max moved into position, ready for the final battle. They were not just fighting for their lives. They were fighting for humanity's future. Suddenly, the sky above darkened as an explosion rang out. A fleet of AI-controlled drones soared into the air, their weapons blazing. The drones, designed to track and target the warbeasts' weaknesses, disrupted the alien creatures' genetic enhancements. The warbeasts howled in pain as their bodies jerked in unnatural ways, their advanced biology fighting against the disruption. For the first time, the warbeasts seemed to stumble, caught off guard by the AI's precision. But the warbeasts were far from defeated. They quickly adapted, using their heightened instincts and alien intelligence to change their tactics. The initial shock was over, and the warbeasts retaliated with a fury unlike anything Ben had ever seen. They learned. They evolved. Their coordination became terrifyingly efficient as they surrounded Ben and his dog. Ben's pulse quickened. The battle was intensifying. The warbeasts began to advance in waves, their massive claws and fangs tearing through the air with deadly intent. The human soldiers, despite their technological advantages, were still outnumbered, and the aliens' raw power was overwhelming. The first wave crashed into the defenses, and Ben's heart sank. They were losing ground. Max, though injured, remained by Ben's side, his loyalty unwavering. Ben could feel the dog's pain with every step. Max's once strong limbs now faltered, but he still stood strong, fighting for his friend. The bond between them was unbreakable. Ben knew that if they were to survive this battle, it would be together. He couldn't afford to lose Max. Not now, not when they were so close to victory. The soldiers on the front lines, aided by the AI-controlled drones, began to push back the alien warbeasts. Orbital bombardments rained down from above, targeting the alien strongholds and slowing their advance. Each explosion lit up the sky like a fireworks display, but it was far from a celebration. This was a fight for survival, and the outcome was still uncertain. Amid the chaos, Ben and Max pushed forward. Max, despite his injuries, showed remarkable courage, leaping into the fray with the same ferocity that had earned him a reputation among the military. He tore into the alien warbeasts, his instincts honed by years of combat training. But Ben could see the toll it was taking. His dog's movements were slowing, his once quick reflexes now labored. Ben was starting to feel the weight of the situation. He had seen his comrades fall, their bodies strewn across the battlefield. He had watched helplessly as humanity's forces were overwhelmed by the alien horde. And yet he knew that the only chance for victory lay in their unity, in the strength of their will to survive. But the warbeasts were adapting faster than Ben could have ever imagined. They were evolving before his eyes, their once primal tactics now replaced with a more calculated, strategic approach. The AI drones, though powerful, were struggling to keep up. The Warbeasts had learned to counter their every move. Ben's mind raced. He had to come up with a new plan, and fast. The drones, though effective, were not enough. They needed a decisive blow, something that would stop the Warbeasts in their tracks. And in that moment, Ben realized what he had to do. He had to sacrifice himself. The decision was gut-wrenching. Max was barely hanging on, and Ben knew that if they didn't act now, both of them would be lost. He needed to use the drone's full power to create a diversion, something that would give the remaining soldiers enough time to regroup and launch a final offensive. Ben called to the AI drone, giving it a new command. The drones responded, their weapons shifting into a more powerful configuration. Ben's voice trembled as he spoke into the comms. "This is it. We're going to take them down. Together." Max, though exhausted, stood by his side, as if he understood what was coming. Ben's heart swelled with pride as he looked at his loyal companion. The bond they shared was undeniable, and he knew that Max would fight to the end, just as he would. With one final command, Ben activated the drone's full offensive capabilities. The sky lit up as the drones unleashed a barrage of laser fire, targeting the Warbeasts with pinpoint accuracy. The blast shook the earth beneath their feet, and Ben could feel the vibrations in his chest. But the Warbeasts didn't back down. They charged forward, their claws slashing through the air. Max, despite his injuries, rushed into the fray, leading the charge. Ben followed, his heart racing as the final battle began. The Warbeasts were fierce, but they were no match for the combined might of human emotion and AI calculation. But just as victory seemed within reach, disaster struck. One of the Warbeasts, larger and more aggressive than the rest, lunged at Max. Ben watched in horror as the creature's claws raked across his dog's side, sending him crashing to the ground. Max's body was limp, his eyes barely open. Ben's heart shattered as he realized that his dog, his best friend, was dying. But there was no time to mourn. He had made a promise to protect Max, and he would see it through, no matter the cost. With a roar, Ben charged at the Warbeast, using his weapon to unleash everything he had. The AI drones were providing cover fire, but the Warbeast was relentless. Ben's vision blurred with tears, but he refused to give up. He couldn't let Max's sacrifice be in vain. The battle was far from over, and the final moments of humanity's struggle were fast approaching. Would Ben be able to pull off the ultimate sacrifice, and would the drone's last-minute plan work to save the Earth? Cliffhanger. With Max's life hanging by a thread, Ben prepares to face the Warbeasts in a final desperate charge. The fate of humanity rests on their shoulders. But can they survive the ultimate test? The battlefield was a landscape of destruction. The once pristine city was now a war zone, its buildings shattered and streets turned to rubble. The alien Warbeasts had brought chaos, but humanity wasn't ready to give up just yet. Ben, the soldier who had been fighting alongside his loyal dog, Max, knew that the time for hope was running out. The battle had reached its most critical point, and the odds of survival seemed slimmer than ever. Max, though injured, still stood by his side. His loyal companion, once a powerful war dog, was now barely able to keep his feet under him. Blood dripped from his side, his breathing shallow and labored. Ben could feel the deep, gut-wrenching pain of watching his dog suffer, but he knew that Max's fight wasn't over. As long as they both still had breath in their bodies, they would keep fighting. Max had been there through it all, and now it was Ben's turn to return the favor. The eye-controlled drones, now fully activated, were working tirelessly to fight back the Warbeasts. Their precision was unmatched, but the Warbeasts' relentless aggression continued to push them back. Every move the drones made, the Warbeasts countered, adapting to each new strategy. The air was filled with the sounds of explosions, laser fire, and the screeching of the alien creatures. Ben felt the weight of the situation pressing down on him. The drones were powerful, but they weren't enough to secure victory. They needed something more. He needed to do something bold, something drastic. As the alien warbeasts continued to swarm, Ben made a decision that would change everything. He turned to the AI system, his fingers shaking as he typed in a new set of commands. The system responded with a cold, mechanical voice. Command received. Initiating genetic synchronization. Ben's plan was simple but dangerous. He would use Max's genetic signature, the unique code embedded in his DNA, to turn the tide of the battle. Ben had no idea if it would work, but it was their only chance. The AI had the capability to analyze genetic information, and if it could tap into Max's enhanced DNA, it might just be able to use that data to create a virus capable of shutting down the Warbeast's genetic enhancements. It was a risky move. If it failed, it could mean the end for them both. As Ben activated the system, he felt a wave of emotion rush over him. Max had always been more than just a tool or a weapon. He had been a friend, a protector, and a partner in this fight. To use Max's genetic code in such a way felt like a betrayal, but Ben knew it was the only way. He had to save humanity, and he had to save Max. Max, sensing the change in Ben's demeanor, looked up at him. His eyes, though tired and filled with pain, shone with unwavering loyalty. Ben gave him a reassuring pat on the head, his voice barely a whisper. "We're in this together, buddy." With the genetic data uploaded and the AI working to create the virus, Ben set his sights on the advancing warbeasts. The drones began to shift their focus, their weapons now targeting the warbeasts' genetic weak points. Ben watched in awe as the AI's calculations paid off. The warbeasts began to stagger, their movements becoming erratic. The once feared creatures, enhanced beyond natural limits, were now vulnerable. They couldn't adapt fast enough to the new weapon Ben had unleashed. But just as it seemed the tide was turning in humanity's favor, the ground shook beneath their feet. Ben's heart skipped a beat as a dark figure materialized in the distance. The alien leader, the one who had orchestrated this entire invasion, appeared in a flash of light, his massive form looming over the battlefield. The leader's presence was overwhelming, and the soldiers who had been fighting so fiercely suddenly faltered. The drones stopped firing, their systems locking onto the alien leader with trepidation. Ben's stomach twisted with dread. The alien leader was unlike anything they had faced before. He was bigger, stronger, and his alien physiology was far more advanced than the warbeasts. His armor glinted in the light, and his eyes burned with an unholy fire. There was no doubt in Ben's mind. This alien was the final obstacle between humanity and victory. The alien leader raised his weapon, a towering energy-based rifle that hummed with deadly power. A wave of fear washed over the remaining human soldiers, but Ben knew that fear could not win this fight. He gripped his weapon tightly, his pulse racing. If they were going to survive, they had to face this enemy head-on. The battle seemed to freeze in that moment. The drones, though powerful, couldn't seem to land a hit. They were paralyzed by the alien leader's immense power. Ben watched as the leader raised his weapon, preparing to fire. It was impossible to defeat him. His technology was light years ahead of anything humanity had. The drones were useless, and human soldiers stood no chance against his sheer strength. Ben's mind raced as he tried to figure out a way to outsmart the alien. But then, something unexpected happened. Max, though critically injured, rose to his feet, his instincts kicking in. The bond between Ben and his dog had always been more than just physical. It was emotional, mental. Max knew what was at stake. With a growl, Max charged toward the alien leader, his body shaking with exhaustion, but his spirit unbroken. Ben couldn't believe what he was seeing. Max, despite his injuries, was willing to sacrifice everything for humanity's survival. Ben felt a surge of emotion as he watched his dog charge into battle. He knew that this was it, the ultimate test. If Max could distract the alien leader, Ben would have a chance to strike. He couldn't let Max face the leader alone. With a battle cry, Ben joined his dog, charging into the fray. The alien leader's weapon fired, but Max was too quick. He dodged and weaved, his body moving with a grace that belied his injuries. The leader swung his weapon, but Max nimbly avoided the strike, drawing the alien's attention away from Ben. In that moment, Ben saw his opening. He lunged forward, using all his remaining strength to close the distance between him and the alien leader. With a deafening roar, Ben's weapon collided with the alien leader's armor. The force of the impact sent shockwaves through the air, but the leader's armor held firm. It was going to take more than just a few hits to bring him down. But Max, still by Ben's side, wasn't giving up. He lunged once more, distracting the alien just long enough for Ben to land a decisive blow. The alien leader stumbled back, his weapon dropping from his hand. Ben, driven by the strength of his bond with Max, pressed forward. He fought with everything he had left, every ounce of energy, every bit of emotion. This was their last chance, and in that moment of desperation, the alien leader faltered. Max had done it. By distracting the leader long enough, he had given Ben the opportunity to deliver the final blow. With a final, deafening roar, the alien leader collapsed, his body crumpling to the ground. The remaining Warbeasts, now leaderless and disoriented, began to retreat. The drones fired relentlessly, ensuring that no alien remained standing. As the dust settled and the sounds of battle faded, Ben looked down at Max, who had collapsed beside him. His dog was battered and bruised, but he had done it. They had done it. Humanity had survived. Cliffhanger. But as the battle came to an end, Ben knew that this victory came at a cost. The war was over for now, but the price of survival had been high. Would humanity be able to rebuild, and would Ben and Max ever find peace after everything they had endured? Only time would tell. The war had reached its final, most intense moment. The air was thick with smoke and the remnants of destruction, and the once pristine battlefield had now become a chaotic wasteland. Ben, the soldier, stood in front of the alien leader, his heart pounding in his chest. The alien's towering figure loomed over him, a dark shadow that seemed to absorb all light. The leader's eyes gleamed with a cruel, cold intelligence, and his weapon, a massive energy rifle, hummed with deadly power. Max, the loyal dog by his side, stood on shaky legs, his breathing labored. His injuries were severe, but his spirit was unbroken. The bond between the two of them was stronger than ever. Ben knew that Max's presence was the only thing keeping him going. As they faced the alien leader, there was a sense of unity between the soldier and his dog, a shared determination to survive. They had fought side by side through the horrors of this war, and now together they would face their greatest challenge yet. The alien leader sneered, his lips curling into a twisted smile. "You think you can defeat me, human?" The voice was deep, guttural, and full of disdain. "Your technology is primitive. Your soldiers are weak. You have no chance against me." Ben clenched his fists, his eyes narrowing. He had heard those words countless times, but this time they wouldn't be enough to deter him. He wasn't just fighting for survival. He was fighting for the future of humanity, and with Max by his side, he would never give up. In that moment, the battle began. The alien leader raised his weapon and fired a massive energy blast toward Ben, the beam so powerful that it tore through the air with a deafening roar. Ben dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the blast. The ground where he had stood exploded in a shower of debris. The shockwave sent him tumbling, but he quickly regained his footing, his heart racing. He had to stay focused. Max, despite his injuries, sprang into action. With a snarl, the dog lunged at the alien leader, his fangs bared and his claws digging into the ground. The alien leader's eyes widened in surprise as Max barreled toward him, but the alien leader's strength was overwhelming. He easily swatted Max aside, sending him crashing to the ground. Ben's heart clenched at the sight of his dog being thrown like a ragdoll, but Max wasn't finished yet. He struggled to rise, his body shaking with exhaustion, but his determination never wavered. Ben knew that he couldn't let the alien leader overpower them. The AI drones, which had been working tirelessly to fight off the Warbeasts, were now focused on the alien leader. They fired their high-tech weapons, sending a barrage of laser beams and missiles toward the alien. The leader deflected the attacks with ease, his energy shield absorbing each hit. But the drones weren't giving up. They kept firing, pushing the leader back. As Ben observed the battle, he realized that the key to defeating the alien leader was to outsmart him. The leader relied heavily on his advanced technology and strength, but he didn't understand human tactics. Ben had to exploit that weakness. He signaled to the drones, using the AI system to adjust their targeting algorithms. The drones changed their tactics, now focusing on the leader's blind spots, where his shield couldn't protect him. It was a small chance, but it was their only chance. Ben charged forward, dodging another blast from the alien leader's weapon. He rolled across the ground, using the debris for cover, and got behind the leader, where the drone's laser fire was concentrated. The alien leader, distracted by the incoming barrage, didn't notice Ben until it was too late. Ben launched himself at the alien, using his momentum to push the leader to the ground. Max, despite his injuries, was right behind him. With a fierce growl, the dog attacked, sinking his teeth into the alien's arm. The alien roared in pain, his armor cracking under the pressure. It was the opening Ben needed. With a swift move, he activated his weapon's energy blade and drove it into the alien's chest. The alien leader screamed, a sound so full of rage and pain that it echoed across the battlefield. But Ben didn't let up. He twisted the blade, piercing through the alien's armor and into its heart. The alien leader's body convulsed, and then he fell silent, collapsing to the ground with a thud. Ben stood over him, his chest heaving with exhaustion and relief. The Warbeasts, leaderless and disoriented, began to falter. The drones took advantage of the moment, firing relentlessly until the last of the Warbeasts were destroyed. The battlefield was finally quiet, the only sound the crackling of fire and the distant groans of the wounded. For a moment, it seemed as though humanity had won. The alien forces were defeated, their leader was dead, and the Warbeasts were no more. But the victory was bittersweet. Ben looked down at Max, who was lying on the ground, breathing heavily but still alive. His dog had been instrumental in this victory, and yet his injuries were too severe. Ben knelt beside Max, his heart heavy with grief. "Max, you did it," Ben whispered, his voice trembling. "We did it. You saved us all." Max's tail wagged weakly, and his eyes met Ben's. There was no need for words. The bond between them was stronger than any words could express. Max had fought with everything he had, and now he was at peace. Ben stayed by his dog's side, unable to move, unable to let go. Max had been more than just a dog. He had been Ben's partner, his companion, and his friend. They had been through hell together, and now Max's life was coming to an end. Ben couldn't help but feel a sense of loss so deep that it seemed to crush him. But then something remarkable happened. As Ben sat there, holding Max, he felt a strange surge of energy. The AI-controlled drones, which had been scanning the battlefield for any remaining threats, began to power down. The war was over, and humanity had won. But Ben knew that the true victory was not just in defeating the aliens. It was in the bond he shared with Max. In that moment, Ben realized that humanity's survival was not just about advanced technology or powerful weapons. It was about the strength of human spirit, the resilience to fight against impossible odds, and the emotional connections that defined them. Max had given everything to ensure humanity's survival, and now Ben would honor that sacrifice by continuing the fight, for Max, for humanity, and for the future. As Ben stood up, carrying Max in his arms, the drones powered down, their mission complete. The alien war was over, but the road to rebuilding humanity had only just begun. The fight had been won, but the real challenge was yet to come. Ben looked up at the sky, the stars shining bright above. Humanity had survived the darkness, and now it was time to rebuild. With the memory of Max, the brave dog who had given everything for this victory, Ben knew that the future was worth fighting for. The tide had turned, and humanity would rise again. Cliffhanger. But even as Ben and the surviving soldiers began to rebuild, a new threat loomed on the horizon. The aliens had been defeated, but who could say what other dangers lay beyond the stars? The war was over, but the adventure was just beginning. The battlefield was silent now. The once chaotic sounds of war had been replaced by an eerie calm that hung in the air like a heavy fog. Smoke still rose from the remnants of destroyed alien warships and the burning wreckage of warbeasts that had fallen in the final clash. The sky, once darkened by the shadow of invasion, now stood clear, the stars gleaming bright above. But beneath this peaceful exterior, the cost of the battle was painfully evident. Ben stood alone on the desolate ground, holding the collar of his beloved dog, Max. His fingers gripped the worn leather tightly as he stared into the distance, his heart heavy with grief and a strange sense of fulfillment. Max had been more than just a dog. He had been his companion, his protector, and the key to humanity's victory. Together, they had faced insurmountable odds, battling alongside each other in the fiercest of conflicts. And now, as Ben stood there, the weight of their shared sacrifice pressed down on him. Humanity had won. The alien invasion was over, and the warbeasts had been defeated. The leader of the alien forces had been destroyed, and the threat that had once loomed over Earth was no more. But at what cost? Max was gone. The soldier had lost his closest friend and partner in the fight for survival. There was no celebrating this victory. The battlefield had taken everything from them, everything except their will to fight, their love for each other, and their devotion to protecting Earth. Ben closed his eyes for a moment, allowing the memories of the past battles to flood his mind. He remembered the long nights, the adrenaline-pumping battles, and the quiet moments when Max would rest by his side, offering comfort when it was needed most. He remembered the looks of terror in the eyes of the warbeasts as they faced humanity's relentless will to survive. And most of all, he remembered the bond between him and Max, a bond that had transcended words and was unbreakable even in the face of death. The dog's collar felt heavier in his hands now, a constant reminder of the loss he had suffered. But Ben knew that the sacrifice had not been in vain. The aliens were gone, and humanity had a chance to rebuild. The memory of Max, the brave dog who had fought alongside him to the very end, would live on. His sacrifice would not be forgotten. As Ben stood there, looking out over the battlefield, a group of soldiers approached him. They walked with purpose, their faces somber but resolute. They had seen the destruction that the aliens had wrought, and they had witnessed the sacrifice that Ben and Max had made. One of the soldiers, a young woman with a determined look in her eyes, stepped forward and placed a hand on Ben's shoulder. "We won because of you," she said quietly, her voice thick with emotion. "Because of Max. You two saved us all." Ben nodded, his eyes misting over as he looked at the soldiers around him. They were the future of humanity's defense, the ones who would carry on the fight if the need ever arose again. And they would remember the legacy of Ben and Max, who had given everything to ensure Earth's survival. A few hours later, a small ceremony was held to honor Ben and Max. Soldiers, civilians, and K-9 units gathered together to pay their respects. A monument was erected in their honor, a towering structure of stone and steel, with a plaque that read, "To the soldier and his dog, who defended Earth and gave everything for the future." The monument stood at the heart of a new military training facility, one that would prepare a new generation of soldiers and K-9 units for any future threats. The facility was a symbol of hope, a testament to humanity's resilience and its unyielding spirit to survive. And it was also a symbol of the bond between man and dog, a bond that had proved stronger than the might of alien invaders. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the field, the new generation of soldiers began their training. Young men and women, determined to follow in Ben's footsteps, worked alongside their K-9 partners, learning the skills they would need to protect Earth from any future dangers. The sound of training exercises filled the air, a sound that had once been absent during the dark days of the invasion. Ben watched from a distance, his heart swelling with pride as he saw the future of humanity's defense take shape. The legacy of Max and himself would live on in these soldiers and their dogs. They were the ones who would carry the torch forward, ensuring that the sacrifices made in the war against the aliens would never be forgotten. The camera zoomed out, capturing the entirety of the training facility. The monument stood tall in the center, a symbol of honor and remembrance. In the background, the Earth was slowly rebuilding. The scars of war were still visible, but they were beginning to fade as humanity worked together to heal and rebuild. The cities that had been destroyed were being reconstructed, and the people who had once been filled with fear were now filled with hope. The war was over, and the future was bright once more. But even as humanity celebrated its victory, a dark shadow lingered in the distance. Unseen by those celebrating below, the alien forces had not been completely wiped out. There were remnants of their fleets, scattered across the galaxy, hidden in the far reaches of space. The war may have been won, but the threat was far from over. As the camera zoomed in on Ben's face, a look of determination passed over his features. He knew that the fight for humanity's survival was not yet finished. The aliens might be regrouping, waiting for the right moment to strike again. But Ben was confident that, no matter what, humanity would always rise to meet the challenge. They had survived the first invasion, and they would survive any future threats. With their strength, resilience, and unwavering resolve, they would never give up. As the screen faded to black, a final message appeared. The battle may be over, but the war for humanity's survival is never truly won. The fight continues. And with that, the story ended, leaving room for future adventures and the promise of even greater battles to come. Humanity's legacy had been secured, but there was always more to fight for, and the heroes of the past would live on in the hearts of those who came after. The dawn of a new era had arrived, and humanity was ready to face whatever came next. Closing hook. But in the deep, uncharted regions of space, a new enemy was stirring, one even more dangerous than the last. The galaxy had yet to see the full extent of the aliens' power. And as humanity looked toward the future, they couldn't shake the feeling that the real fight was just beginning.